Here's a question I have for you. Do you think we're gonna see a different Trump in 2016? Okay. Okay, so a lot of people here
If we're
are very hesitant that we would, right? A lot of people are believing that Trump is still the same man that he was in 2016 through 2020 and today in 2024. That's why so many people are withholding their vote from him. But I want you to listen to RFK Jr.'s perspective here because he kind of makes a different assessment here, claiming that Trump is a different man, and he is not. This is going to be a very different Trump that you see in this upcoming term if he gets elected. And I want you guys to watch this video. Other things that we're going to talk about today are apparently Trump's new lead in the latest polls, where he was previously trailing Harris, and now he has like a 6% bump, which people are calling the Kennedy bump, which is really interesting to see. Other things I want to look at are Trump's new thoughts on this abortion regulation that's happening in Florida. This bill that they're trying to pass. That's going to be interesting. I also want us to do another quick look at the interview that that was aired yesterday by CNN. This interview is so controversial. I swear, some people think it was the greatest interview in the world. Other people are just criticizing them. Even people on the far left are criticizing this interview, and we're going to look into all of it. Also, some new insight on apparently that this interview was 41 minutes long, which is absolutely absurd. Anyways, we're going to get into all that. So stick around. I'm excited for it. But we're going to watch this video. It was by the All In podcast that I believe was shared today. And here is Kennedy, the myth, the man, the legend himself. Check it out.
if President Trump wins, that people are going to see a very different President Trump than they did during the first term. I think he's changed as a person, and I've known him for 30 years. I've sued him, I've litigated against him, and had a friendship with him even when I was litigating against him.
How how great does that speak to the character of Kennedy? Like you could have profound disagreements to the point where you are suing him on behalf of the American public, but you are still able to actually be genuine friends with him. Okay, so I think this really does speak a lot to his character as well as Trump's. Okay, but let's keep going because he really gives you perspective here.
And by the way, successfully against him. But I think he's focused on his legacy. He said many interesting things to me about what he did wrong the last time and about how he filled his, he had no idea he was going to win. He had no idea how to govern, and people descended on him the day that he got elected and said, "You got to appoint this guy, appoint this guy." And he said, I appointed a lot of people I shouldn't have appointed. I know who they are now. He also said something in
Responsibility. Okay, that's Trump taking complete responsibility over past actions and saying that this is what I'm going to do differently. Okay, also, and if you don't want to trust Trump's words here, I think knowing that our knowing that RFK Jr. is actually going to be part of his transition team should give you a lot of comfort. Because let's say you still don't trust Trump after this, I think you should still trust Kennedy, and this is why. So a lot of people are saying, I don't know if I'm going to cast my vote for Trump, but I think I'm going to cast my vote for Kennedy through Trump. So that is a potential idea.
interesting to me. He said, because the Democrats, one of the big sort of fulcrums of their terror of Trump is that he's going to implement this Heritage Foundation, blueprint, which is called Project 2025. And he brought this issue up to me, and he said, they always telling me I'm for Project 2025. I never read Project 2025 until they started accusing me of it. He said that was written by a right wing ass. This is what he said. He said there are left wing assholes and there are right wing assholes, and it was a right wing asshole who wrote that thing. And then he started going through it. So I think there's a lot, and I think he's interested in his legacy now. He wants to leave behind some accomplishments, and he wants to make our country better. And I think he's listening to a wider range of voices, and he's preparing to govern right now. And I'm going to be on the transition committee, picking the people who are going to govern. Tulsi's going to be there. There's going to be a wide diversity of stakeholders, but he's listening to more than just that kind of narrow right wing band that people are terrified
That
of.
would be
Exactly. Just yesterday, we saw Kamala Harris say that, of course, she's gonna have a Republican in her cabinet. That's good, right? Like you saw me yesterday. I said that's good. I think that's great. But here, again, you see RFK Jr. reiterating the idea that they have, I believe, the stronger diversity of opinion, right? Him, Tulsi, a libertarian, bunch of other people. I think this is great. Also, this was RFK Jr.'s opinion um, about kind of the debate yesterday. Look at what he says. He tweeted this, and I also want to show something else here. But he writes, "The main problem isn't corrupt individuals; it's a corrupt system. Most, but not all, the scientists, doctors, and public officials in our agencies are honest and caring, trying to serve the public in spite of a system of broken incentives." And then he goes on to say, "President Trump and I are going to change that." Also, you know what I've really been vibing with, kind of. I've been vibing with this idea of this new language that I've been seeing from Kennedy. He went from saying Shanahan and I to President Trump and I. So to me, I think that just shows a little bit of where he is kind of emotionally and how he's connected to the campaign, or almost how he's disconnected from the campaign. I think I'm comfortable saying that. Now, you could go ahead and argue with me in the comments. I welcome it. And he says, so that 90% of the people who are dedicated public servants can do their jobs free of conflict of interest and industry pressure. I'm speaking of the public health agencies, but the same principle applies across the board. And you know who else just said something very, very similar? It is Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy. Okay. He wrote yesterday, actually, sorry, this morning, he wrote this morning, Kamala's interview last night was a reminder that we're not running against a candidate, we're running against a system. So here in these two tweets, you see this idea about how the Democrats have almost systematized this process and it's corrupted it. And I love how we saw like the Republicans, on just to give you a complete polar opposite, the Republicans tried everything they could to actually not to have a President Trump as the Republican nominee. Like, let me look up real quick. Like, do you guys remember this? Like, do you remember all of like this entire slate of people who were actually kind of gunning for the presidency? And like, this just tells you a lot. Like, this says Fox News Democracy. I'm just gonna say, like, I believe the Republican Party right now is more democratic than the Democratic Party. Like, this is absurd to have an entire slate of candidates. This is what I mean, and this is what I believe Vivek Ramaswamy means here when he says that we're not running against a candidate, we're running against a system. Because even the Republican Party tried to essentially not have President Trump to be the Republican nominee, but again, President Trump's influence was just so grand that he ended up being the nominee anyways, even regardless of not participating in debates and all that stuff. But I think this just speaks to the fact that the Republican Party isn't really pulling against a system here, but actually are a candidate, as opposed to what we saw yesterday with Kamala Harris in this interview. Because I don't know if you guys watched it, I'll have it linked up, but not to say that it was embarrassing. I think some of the answers were fair, and I think it's better for you to actually go ahead and create your own opinion on it. I will share some of my thoughts later on in the video, but one thing was clear is that I believe that we are almost being lied to in a sense, and I think there's a reason why we don't see a lot of other that we didn't see another interview with Kamala Harris, and why we probably won't see another one anytime soon, and why this one interview with them it wasn't with Kamala Harris by herself. She essentially had to have her handheld throughout the majority of it. And you know what else I came across? Look at this post on X. Kyle writes, breaking report, CNN had 41 minutes of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz joint interview and only released 18 minutes of it. Tell me, what else was in the other 20 minutes of it? We didn't even get half of the interview. What else happened? Now, as someone who, makes videos and puts out videos on the internet, I understand that whenever like the long recording that you make is probably not going to end up being the published thing, right? Because sometimes there's dead air, and most of my videos are remain almost entirely unedited for the most part. But still, it if you film for 40 minutes, maybe you're not going to get a 40-minute video, right? That's just what happens. But to film for 41 minutes and only get 18 minutes out of it, are those the only 18 minutes where Kamala Harris was actually, there, where she spoke eloquently, where she made sense? I don't know. That's entirely all speculation. From what I saw, I thought the interview was fair. I was expecting a bit more, but that the fact that we only got less than 20 minutes from a 40-minute interview just makes you kind of second guess. And to see all these other experiences with, President Trump going on these other podcasts for hours on end, for RFK Jr. going on many other podcasts where he's actually just speaking candidly for hours on end again, it just makes you wonder, like, why can't Kamala Harris do the same thing? I don't know. I think that's going to be up to you to decide. But anyway, speaking back on Kennedy, a lot of people have been making this question, like, if JFK and RFK were alive today, would they actually be proud of the Democratic Party? Would they even be Democrats? I think that's an interesting question. And RFK Jr. actually answers this. Check this.
I think to me, the most troubling thing about what's happening now, you've had two Democratic candidates who've not been able to give unscripted interviews, which is extraordinary. I mean, my father and uncle were so proud of the United States, our capacity to engage in debate, to defend who we were in the world, to defend a vision of our country, to articulate it to the rest of the world, to be the leaders of the free world, and have a command of the facts and of knowledge, and to be eloquent. And how can you be a leader in the world? What does the rest of the world think of us right now? I mean, what could they possibly think? We have two Democratic Party candidates who are not able to explain themselves in an interview. Bill
It's bonkers. It's
Mayer said the
bonkers.
other
Yeah.
day something
Yeah.
really, I think, poignant, which is if you want the job of handling the nuclear code, you got to do an interview first.
Come on.
And how can you go 30, 39 days without talking to the press?
And you know what? Let me just add real quick. I think they wouldn't have gotten so much scrutiny if they had actually been going on interviews separately for the past, 2 months. If that were to have happened, then no one would have really batted two eyes if they're like, oh my gosh, it's only an 18-minute interview. That wouldn't have happened at all. Okay. Let me be clear. That would not have happened at all. It's the fact that we haven't seen interviews. It's the fact that we haven't seen them talk to the press. And it's the fact that many people like me, concerned voters, have been just genuinely upset about the fact that the person who's actually running this campaign isn't actually speaking to people. Again, now you're going back to Vivek Ramaswamy here. Like, are we running against a candidate, or are we running against a system? I'd say that if you're making the argument that we are running against a candidate, then I think that we'd see them in more interviews. Okay? That's gonna be my little assumption, but let's keep going right here.
Without being able to defend your record, to explain
Yeah.
who you are to the American people. And if you talk to Democrats about this, and you can get past the anger and past the vitriol and this kind of wall of tribal resistance to any new knowledge coming in, what they, or any contrary facts, what they'll say is, well, we're not really voting for Kamala, we're voting for the apparatus. And you ask the next question, has that apparatus served you? Has the open border served you? Has the $35 trillion debt served you? Has all the endless wars served you? Has the destruction of the American middle class, the highest inflation rate in a generation? Has any of that actually, has that apparatus produced something for the United States that you're so proud of that you want to blindly vote without knowing who you're voting for? Anyway, that
It makes an interesting question, right? Like, are you voting for Kamala, or are you voting against Trump? I'd like any I would encourage you guys to answer that question, okay? If you're willing and if you're comfortable. Are you if you are someone who is very against, Trump and you don't wanna cast your vote for Trump, I'd ask you, well, are you voting for Kamala or are you voting against Trump? And are you comfortable with that decision? Another thing that happened that I touched on earlier is that ever since RFK Jr. has, officially withdrew his name from many of the battleground states and has kind of changed his status almost. And what I mean by that is, if I can, if I could share this really, really quickly. So check this out. I don't know if you guys spent a lot of time on RFK Jr.'s page before, but before he wrote he wrote that he was an independent president or independent candidate for president of the United States. Okay. Now you don't have any of that. Also, I never noticed this before, but it's super funny how, he claimed New York was his residence and now he's just kind of embracing Los Angeles, California right here. That is hilarious. It really is. I wonder if that's just kind of him giving the middle finger to New York because obviously he has many things that would claim him to be a resident of the state, and I agree with that. I stand by that. But it is interesting that even him right now, like this is kind of your choice here, like this to me just feels like a middle finger, which is hilarious. But anyways, after he's kind of not withdrew but suspended his campaign, and endorsed President Trump or publicly supported, he has seen Trump has seen an increase here. Look at this, 6.5 points. That is that is wild. Okay? And again, if Kennedy was polling at 5%, which I don't really believe, I believe he was polling much higher. But if he was polling there, then now this is probably from that. I think you could speculate, but I believe that to be true. And maybe I should do one of these polls on my channel soon because I believe people were kind of, shocked a little bit. They were disturbed whenever he suspended his campaign and showed public support of President Trump. But now I believe people are kind of opening up to the idea again. But, anyways, what do you think about this? Because obviously, if you are someone who is for Trump, I believe this is probably good. But do you also believe this is the Kennedy bump, like people are suggesting? There's this one person who who wrote, "We call this the RF Kennedy Jr. bounce." Okay. This is the Kennedy effect, the Democrats fear. And that's probably why the Democrats are trying to keep his name on certain ballots, right? That I would say that. I really would. Now, another thing that I saw today that I think is interesting, and this is probably going to make a lot of people who are I actually believe this is going to make people who are pro life and pro choice happy, especially if you're someone who has been consuming a lot of the media essentially from the left who are saying like, "Oh, guys, Trump, he's going to put a federal abortion ban." Okay? And obviously that's not true. Okay? That's 100% propaganda, but I want to play this 30-second clip from Trump today asking about this in Florida. Check this out.
Voting yes or no on Amendment 4 in Florida?
So I think 6 weeks, you need more time than 6 weeks. I've disagreed with that right from the early primaries. When I heard about it, I disagreed with it. At the same time, the Democrats are radical because the 9 months is just a ridiculous situation where you can do an abortion in the ninth month. And, some of the states like Minnesota and other states have it where you could actually execute the baby after birth. And all of that stuff is unacceptable. So I'll be voting no for that reason.
Okay. So, and I believe this is actually reflective of the new the new President Trump that RFK Jr. was discussing in that earlier clip, because I think you do see some transformation here where he is focusing more on legacy. He's focusing more on long game gains, really, because I believe he's appealing to the moderates here. He's taking a stand and saying, you know what, 6 weeks is actually ridiculous. Okay, we can't allow that. It's not enough time for people to make that decision. But on the other end of it, 9 months, that's ridiculous. See, and I believe that's reflective of the American public. Most people are somewhere right in the middle. Some people, but what the media does is that they're so great at elevating the extremes. And President Trump right now, he's saying, "No, I actually don't agree with either of those." And again, like we have like we talk about this a lot. We're like, "Oh, the it's not black or white because the truth is in the gray." This position from President Trump is in the gray. Another thing that I wanted to share is this woman kind of demolishing Kamala Harris. It's just kind of a fun clip, but I'll play it anyways.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you saw her on CNN, but let me be very clear. I am an American woman. I am a MAGA woman, and I don't need a man standing next to me to get up and speak.
A lot of people are like absolutely hating Tim Waz's presence in this interview. I don't know if you guys saw him too, because like he really didn't even speak much. He kind of acted like, I don't want to be mean, but he kind of acted like a support dog. Okay, like a dog right there, just so you could pet whenever you kind of get a little anxious. Like, what is that? You're running for president of the United States. Like this just seems kind of wild to me, really. Now, a lot of people are also sharing this clip of Tim Waz because I believe this is the clip where he talks about kind of wearing his emotions on his sleeve and that he didn't misspeak earlier. Check this out. It's kind of unbelievable, really.
You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and
Okay. First of all, nothing that he said right now was wrong. Okay? I respect your service. I'm thankful for your service. You are incredible for that. Okay? Same goes for you being a teacher. Okay? That is incredible. We need more teachers. They are incredible people, especially whenever they are truly there for the children. I love it. But I think you're gonna see him as he goes and talks a little bit longer. I think you're gonna see how he's not answering the question, and he's just dancing around it. It is wild.
I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is. And again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And the idea that you
He like didn't answer the question at all, and thankfully, Dana is gonna actually reiterate the question again just to kind of get a concrete answer. But yeah.
said that you were in war.
Yeah.
Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog. I'm not going to do that. And the one thing I'll never do is I'll never demean another member's service in any way. I never have. And I
See, again, the problem isn't that he misspoke. The problem is that he's lacking the ownership and the responsibility for the words that he spoke. Okay, if he would have come in here and say, "You know what? That was highly inappropriate. I shouldn't have said that at all." And just he'd be extending respect to the people in service who have gone through that, who are doing that. Like that would have just been absolutely incredible. And he would have gotten so much respect. But instead, he blamed grammar. Come on. Come on. And then you bring your wife into this, like, I just think there's a million different ways that this could have gone better, and I think a lot of people on the left were, upset here, and I think a lot of people on the right were, making fun of this. Now, as someone who doesn't always say the right words, like, hey, you see me in the comment section all the time. I'm always you guys are calling me out for things that I've said or asking for more clarity, and I'm there. But at the end of the day, like I own my mistakes. I'm very clear whenever I mess up, and I own it, I take responsibility, and I just don't think we saw that here. Now, another clip that's, like, really going viral, look at this, 5 million views on X. This is wild, but here Kamala Harris is talking about Israel, Gaza, and what's happening. So, I'll play the clip out, but yeah.
President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been doing it for months and months, along with you. Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change. But
Personally personally, I like how she said that's not gonna change, right? To me, that was really strong, and I think a lot of people, especially people on the right, found comfort in that. There's a lot of people on the left who do not like what she says next, but just to give you kind of a census of where people are.
let's take a step back. October 7, 1,200 people were massacred. Many young people who were simply attending a music festival. Women were horribly raped. As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And we have got to get a deal done. We were in Doha. We have to get a deal done. This war must end.
And in the meantime,
and we must get a deal that is about getting the hostages out. I've met with the families of the American hostages. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
but no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at the significance of this to the families, to the people who are living in that region, a deal is not only the right thing to do to end this war, but will unlock so much of what must happen next. I remain committed since I've been on October 8th to what we must do to work toward a two-state solution where Israel is secure and in equal measure, the Palestinians have security and self-determination and dignity.
Wow. Well, let me know what you think about that clip and kind of the perspective that Kamala Harris has, whether you agree with her or disagree with her. I know this is kind of a sensitive conversation, and a lot of people have really particular viewpoints. Just to give you an idea, some people are saying this is disqualifying, not going to vote for Harris, and I will look down on people who did or who do. Someone else is saying vote Jill Stein or Cornel West again. And now,
Has
I
tried
think
unsuccessfully.
I think this is a really complicated issue, and even people who we, like, absolutely adore, like RFK Jr., even he had incredibly controversial viewpoints on Israel and Gaza, okay? Now, I don't know if you're someone who is in agreement with him or is in disagreement with him, but I think the fact is people have really personal perspectives here. So it's just it's really interesting to see how that is playing into this or in that interview, really, and also seeing people actually understand Kamala Harris's perspective there as well. Now, there's this other video, and this is probably gonna be the last video that I share, and this is actually talking to another perspective that I brought up recently, saying that I believe that the Kamala Harris voter pool, like, I wouldn't say that they're low IQ people, but I was saying that these are people who are almost less informed for the most part, from what I've been seeing, and which again isn't. I don't think it's bad, right? Like at the end of the day, there's people who just aren't interested in politics. There's people who aren't interested in the news cycle, and I think that's completely fair. Like you don't need to be like some people are into sports. I'm not into sports, right? Like when I'm into sports, it's like Super Bowl season, or it's like the last 2 weeks, and like that's all I care about, really. Like you don't need to be interested in politics if that's not what you're into, but I do think this woman has an interesting leg here. Check this out.
Kamala being like, I'm not going to release my policies until I'm elected. That's like me being like, no, you're going to give me the job and I'm going to show you my resume after. This is literally insane. You have to have such a low IQ voter base to even get away with one of the things she's done.
Absolutely wild. And again, this is going back to Kamala Harris's website and her not publishing like a single policy yet, which is absurd. Like we're gonna keep coming back here, right? Because some people are like, oh my gosh, guys, she posts her policies, and I'm like, where? And they send me like these links from different news organizations talking about them, and I'm like, that's fine. That's fine. But when you do the side by side, when you go to kamalaharris.com and donaldtrump.com, like I think that is where the majority of people who are trying to be informed will go to actually become more aware of the future that they're trying to create. And I think that's fair. And if it's not on your website, to me it's almost like it doesn't really exist. And also many people are feeling this way as well. Like look at what MSNBC just shared. This headline is Mixed Race Voters React to Presidential Race. And this to me is incredibly surprising, really.
You feel some kinship towards her as a mixed person?
Not personally. I find a lot of her trajectory to not be my brand of woman leader. We've got 3 major international crises going on and someone applying to be commander in chief. As a woman, I want to see you do more than, appeal to giggling and having a girl moment on the stage.
Wow. That is that is surprising. And another thing with apparently Tim Walz's brother is showing support for President Trump, right? So and again, take this with a grain of salt, right? Because there were people who were Kennedy's family, and they were saying, yeah, guys, don't vote for my cousin RFK Jr. Like vote for President Biden. And you know what? Family's family, right? You're going to disagree with them. Kennedy was completely unbothered by this, but I think it is interesting to see, right? His name was Jeff Walz, showing support for Donald Trump. Again, I'm taking this with a grain of salt, right? I don't really care. At the end of the day, I'm gonna judge Tim Walz. I'm not gonna be judging his brother. So anyways, that's all for today. Let me know what you think about all this. I know we talked about a lot of things, and I had no intention of this video going this long, but there were a lot of things to talk about. And I'm happy to see RFK Jr. taking more of a just more seriously as a politician, as someone who's going to be in this space, and that makes me excited. Also, we talked about this other clip from RFK Jr. talking about his why Harris and Walz does not represent the Democratic Party of JFK and RFK. We talked about this jump in the polls with Trump and Harris. We talked about President Trump voting against this legislation. Okay, really interesting. And we did a quick, not recap, but we looked at a couple clips from the interview with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz yesterday. Anyways, let me know what you think about all this, and I'm excited to read all your comments. Okay, I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you all next time. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching and listening. I appreciate your time so much, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to support what we're building here, please like and subscribe. It means a lot and it really helps us out. And if you want to see even more content from me, make sure to follow me on Instagram. I'm going to be sharing a lot more on there. Thank you so much. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.